Good morning. This is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina. Today we're going to cover Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 23. And I'm calling this one Joseph's Dreams, a Massacre, and Egypt. In our previous lesson, we handled one of the four Old Testament prophecies in Matthew 2 that point forward to the birth of Jesus. And in today's lesson, we will handle the other three. In our previous lesson, we covered Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. And today we'll look at Jesus would be called out of Egypt. There would be weeping in Ramah, and Jesus would be called a Nazarene. Let's read our first passage today. Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 15 says this. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I called my son. Joseph is often overlooked. He was a just and godly man, and most importantly, Joseph was a man of action. God chose Joseph just as much as he chose Mary. This is the second of four dreams of Joseph that the Bible tells us about. In this occurrence, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and told Joseph to take Jesus and Mary to Egypt right away. The angel also told Joseph that Herod was seeking Jesus and wanted to destroy him. Notice the immediacy of reaction by Joseph. Maybe I'm reading this incorrectly, but to me it sounds like Joseph woke up in the middle of the night after having that dream, and they departed for Egypt before dawn. This sounds like the same kind of immediacy spoken of in Revelation when the Jews hear about the abomination of desolation in the temple. Now is okay, but yesterday is better. But this verse also could be emphasizing that they traveled by night, and perhaps after a day of packing, they left at dusk later that day. Perhaps that would be an easier journey than in the daytime through the desert. But seeing how Joseph reacted in his other dreams, I would guess they left immediately. Regardless, Joseph acted on that dream quickly. Most of us have had some pretty weird dreams in our lives. An angel of God never has appeared to me in a dream, at least that I remember. But Joseph seemed to be able to instantly differentiate between the appearance of an angel or just another crazy dream. But Joseph's immediate response is always apparent. Again, Joseph had four dreams, and while the first three describe an angel of the Lord giving Joseph specific knowledge or warnings, and the fourth dream, as we will see later in Matthew 2, the Bible says, and being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee. Warned by God? I wonder if that was through the same angel or directly from God, or maybe even just a voice. If it was the same angel, Joseph's diligence and immediacy in responding to all four of these dreams might have gotten easier with his familiarity with this angel. The Bible often speaks of dreams. In Genesis chapter 28, verse 12, Jacob saw angels descending from heaven and ascending into heaven on a ladder. Here's an interesting passage from Numbers, which is chapter 12, verses 4 through 8. Suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, Come out, you three, to the tabernacle of meeting. So the three came out. Then the Lord came down in the pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both went forward. Then he said, Hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. I speak with him face to face, even plainly, and not in dark sayings. And he sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? I can only find one description of God appearing to someone in a dream. Genesis chapter 20, verses 1 through 5 says this, And Abraham journeyed from there to the south and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur and stayed in Gerar. Now Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, Indeed, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her. And he said, Lord, will you slay a righteous nation also? Did he not say to me, She is my sister? And she, even she herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands, I have done this. It is interesting that in this occurrence, God protected the beginning of the Jewish nation that led all the way to the birth of Jesus, which God also protected with warnings and dreams. Okay, let's get back to Matthew. Remember, Matthew wrote his gospel to the Jewish people who knew the Old Testament prophecies concerning the Messiah, and this was the second of 4 fulfilled prophecies in Matthew 2 concerning the birth of the Messiah. Matthew reminded the Jews and us of this verse from Hosea. Hosea 11, verse 1 says, When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. Matthew, John, Paul, and Peter really knew the Tanakh, what we refer to as the Old Testament. Certainly, I've read all of these verses, but it makes me realize that many of these Old Testament verses pertain to Jesus without me noticing. I'm assuming that Matthew felt the same way. Matthew might have read Micah 5:2 and thought that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, but did Matthew understand this verse from Hosea before the birth of Jesus that was telling the people that Jesus would have to depart Israel and go to Egypt for a time? Maybe, but I did not notice this when I read Hosea. The reminder to us all is that all of the Bible is about Jesus. The Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. It is probable that there is not one page of the Bible where we cannot find Jesus. It might take a little looking, but the Bible is a biography of Jesus written by 40 authors. Okay, let's read the next passage, which is the most horrendous. Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 18 says this, Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more. It is difficult to imagine the wickedness of any man who would kill any 2-year-old child, not to mention someone who would kill numerous children. We don't really know how many children Herod killed, but this involved all male children 2 years old and younger in Bethlehem and its surrounding districts. Herod did this to ensure that he killed the prophesied King of the Jews. I'm unsure of the birth records of that time, but it seems likely that when a Jewish boy was circumcised, the temple would have records of that. But this tells us much about the evil heart of Herod. He was called Herod the Great, likely because he had the Jewish temple rebuilt, but that was a veiled attempt to gain favor with the Jewish people of that time. Herod was not well liked by the Jews because of his cruelty. An Italian 14th century writer, Giovanni Boccaccio, stated that Herod killed 144,000 young boys. Some Coptic sources have agreed with that number and also gave the massacre a date, December 29th. Others have surmised that these 144,000 will become the remnant spoken of in Revelation. An early Syrian list of saints says there were 64,000 children massacred. The Catholic Encyclopedia, in an entry written in 1910 by Frederick George Holwick, states that there were between 6 and 20 children killed, and in his calculation of those numbers, Holwick cited that Bethlehem could not have had more than a population of 1,000 at the time. It seems like nothing more than a guess from a man 2,000 years after the event, and perhaps driven by the pervasive anti-Semitism of Catholicism. The bottom line is we don't know the number of children who died that day, and for anyone to speak with authority on this occurrence other than God demonstrates an amazing level of arrogance. Matthew 2:18 quotes Jeremiah 31:15 and is the third fulfilled prophecy concerning the birth of Jesus that Matthew addressed in this chapter. The location of Ramah is thought to be 5 miles north of Jerusalem, modern Al-Ram, and with Bethlehem being south of Jerusalem and Ramah being north, the districts discussed likely also would have included Jerusalem. Historians, and particularly Josephus, did not write about the massacre of the innocents. Herod's wickedness was all for personal gain, attempting to protect his power and lavish lifestyle. We also should remember that there were periods in Israel's idolatrous past when they had sacrificed babies to the false god of Moloch. And with Holwick's guess of 6 children killed, we should note that there have been women in the United States who have had 10 abortions. Having just spoken of the evilness of the heart of Herod, we can project that same evilness on those killing babies today. And just as God knew each of us when we were in the womb, we know that we were lives to him even then. Murder is not a choice, nor should it ever be argued as a right to choice. No matter what icing we put on the cake, murder is murder, and the murder of children is the worst. Okay, let's read our last passage of the chapter and of the lesson. Matthew chapter 2, verses 19 through 23 says this: Now when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the young child's life are dead. Then he arose, took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. Interestingly, 2,000 years after the death of Herod the Great, doctors have stated that he died from chronic kidney disease that was complicated by maggot-infested gangrene of the genitals. At the time, it was referred to as Herod's evil. Sounds like he got what he deserved. Dr. Jan Hirschman, the lead doctor who recently diagnosed the death of Herod, said that Herod's condition included intense itching, painful intestinal problems, breathlessness, convulsions in every limb, and gangrene of the genitals. This is a perfect reminder that if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I get a bit confused when I see the name Herod in the Bible, as there are 3 Herods discussed in the life of Jesus. Herod the Great was the one who tried to kill Jesus soon after his birth, and Herod the Great died soon after. Upon his death, the Romans split Herod the Great's kingdom among 3 of his children and his sister. One of those sons was Archelaus, also mentioned in Matthew 1, who received the territories of Judea and Samaria after his father's death. Herod the Great's son, Herod Antipas, received the territory of the Upper Galilee, as well as the territory from the east side of Samaria and Judea to the west side of the Jordan River. Antipas was the Herod who beheaded John the Baptist. At that time, Antipas divorced his wife and became involved with Herodias, who had been married to his half-brother, Herod II. It was John the Baptist's criticism of this relationship that led Herodias to use the seductive dance of her daughter to ask Herod Antipas for the head of John the Baptist on a platter as a gift. It was also Herod Antipas who interviewed Jesus just before the crucifixion, fearful that Jesus was John the Baptist resurrected. That would have been bad for Antipas, but having a part in the death of Jesus was much worse. Herod Antipas had a home in Jerusalem. Herod II had once been the front runner to inherit his father's title, but Herod the Great had removed Herod II from his will. Herod the Great's son Philip received territory west of the Jordan River, and Herod's sister Salome was given a few cities, including Ashdod. The line of Herod as rulers of Israel ended soon after the Romans destroyed the temple and took over the region, with the Jews spread to the 4 corners of the world. Okay, back to today's passage. Joseph had a 3rd dream, and this time an angel of the Lord appeared to him, telling Joseph that it was safe to return to Israel. The angel also told Joseph that Herod was dead. Once again, notice the immediacy of Joseph's response. He arose and took Mary and Jesus back to Israel. God warned Joseph in a 4th dream to avoid the area where the son of Herod, Archelaus, was located, specifically in Judea, and consequently, Joseph took his family to the region of the lower Galilee, to the city of Nazareth. Nathanael later would ask Philip this in John 1, verse 46, and Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." While Nazareth was not one of the larger towns of Israel, neither was Cana, where Nathanael was from. Maybe it was a bit of Galilee rivalry that caused Nathanael to make that comment, as the 2 towns were only 8 miles apart. Both of the prophets, Jonah and Nahum, had come from Galilee. Joseph came from Gath-hepher, about 3 miles from Nazareth, while Nahum came from Capernaum on the Sea of Galilee. Capernaum actually means town of Nahum. No prophets had come from Cana, but I guess Nathanael could be happy that Jesus performed the first miracle of his ministry in Cana when he turned the water into wine. Interestingly, Nazareth, Nazarai in Hebrew, means branch, which reminds us of this verse in Isaiah 11, verses 1 through 2, where it says, "There shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. Of course, Jesse was the father of King David, and Jesus is the branch that is prophesied to come from this royal lineage. The word branch in this passage is the same word for Nazarene. Once again, Nazari. This is the fourth Old Testament prophecy fulfilled in the birth of Jesus. Remember, every aspect of the life of Jesus had been pre-planned by God. That includes his mother, his stepfather, where he would be born, where he would move to Egypt, when he would return to Israel, and where he would grow up. Herod and his evil family were not unforeseen either. God is not just interested in the big picture, but the intrinsic details. That includes those same details in our lives as believers. That is what draws me to God, as it reveals the deepness of his love, that he even cares about the seemingly meaningless aspects of our lives. But the most important detail of our lives is that God sent a Savior, and we can choose whether or not to follow him. This is the most important decision of everyone's life. God bless you. Have a great day. This is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina.